You Booked It, episode 18. Hey, entertainers and performers of the world. I'm your host, Dane Reese, and welcome to You Booked It, where I chat with inspiring entertainers 7 days a week. By digging into their journey, we're going to discover everything you need to do to be a successful entertainer. You know, because training usually skips that part about how to actually make your skills work for you in the real world. Fellow entertainers, my drive here at You Booked It is to share the inspiring and incredible journeys of successful entertainers. We are here to support your journey. So go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join the You Booked It email community where we dig deep into truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you book that next audition, submission, or gig. If you enjoy this free podcast, please show your support and search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app where you can subscribe so you don't miss an episode, leave a rating and review. And to show our appreciation for your, fingers crossed, 5-star rating and review, I will give you a shout out on an upcoming episode. And now, let's do this. All right, let's get started. I am excited to introduce my guest today, David Errigo. David, are you ready for this?
I'm absolutely ready for it.
Right on. David is a voice actor based in Los Angeles, and he has a Bachelor of the Arts in Theater from the University of Montana. After spending a few years working in musical theater regionally and on the open sea and in New York City, he found voice acting. While figuring out how to afford and move to Los Angeles to build a career in voiceover work, he did a couple of on-camera commercials and was in a feature film that centered around the Columbine shootings. Arriving in LA in 2016, he hit the ground running and has been making a living as a voice actor for the last 3 years. Some of his favorite credits include Cubone in Detective Pikachu, Scribbler in DreamWorks' Dragon Dawn of New Riders, and Ferb in Milo Murphy's Law. He's really looking forward to sharing the new Disney Channel original movie, Phineas and Ferb, Candace Against the Universe, where he returns to the role of Ferb. There are, of course, other projects in the works, but he can't quite talk about them just yet. Now, David, that is a quick intro of who you are and what you've done, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Fill in the gaps, who you are, and a little bit more about what you do as a professional in the entertainment industry.
Well, a little bit more about who I am is I am a military brat. I was born in North Carolina, raised mostly in a couple different places in Florida, did high school and college in Montana, and that's pretty much it for who I am. What I'm currently working on are a few different animated shows and some video games and commercial opportunities that come along my way. I happen to have some really, really stellar agents who give me all kinds of different opportunities. And I'm fortunate enough to be working consistently in voice to where I actually just recently said I don't want to be submitted for anything else anymore.
That's fantastic. What a great realization, because I can only imagine that while also reaching that ability to say, look, I'm good doing voiceover work. I love this voice acting so much. I'm so passionate about it, but it must be a wonderful feeling to realize that you found your real passion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I actually found that conversation to be really liberating last week. I was like, I'm sitting here, you got me this audition, thank you. But I can't get excited about doing the work. And it was for a feature film. And I just wasn't excited about the idea of the audition at all. And it just was really, really clear to me that that's not where I should be putting my effort right now.
And that's great, because that's what I love about this industry, that it's so big and so diverse that there is quite literally something for everyone. And to find our little niches within this industry is so important, and it can be so fulfilling as well.
Hmm.
Beautiful. Well, let's move on to the next section here. And Look, I am a sucker for a good quote. What is your favorite quote that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, my favorite quote is not really like a famous quote per se. It's almost more of a cliche, but it's something that I was raised on in my household, which is the worst question is the one never asked.
I love that. And how have you applied that quote to your daily life and your career?
In many ways, I look at it and I just say, you know what? You might as well try to shoot for your dreams because what is the worst thing that happens? You still haven't achieved them. Okay.
You're
Uh,
right.
my dad used to make the comparison to like asking out the pretty girl, right? A lot of people or guy or whoever, a lot of people are intimidated by that person, and so they won't ask them out. But the worst thing that happens if you do ask them out is that they say no, and they are still currently not your uh, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, whatever. Nothing changes in that situation.
Yeah. So why not? Right.
Take the shot.
For sure. All right. Well, let's move on. And look, David, of course, you are an entertainer. I'm an entertainer. And I think you'd agree that this industry is one of the most subjective. It can be one of the most brutally honest, personally emotional industries either of us have probably ever experienced.
Mhm.
And you know as well as I that to create and to have a successful career in this industry like you're having now takes a lot of dedication and hard work. And while totally there is an outrageous amount of fun and excitement doing what we do, there are also our fair share of obstacles and
Mm.
challenges and failures we are inevitably going to experience. And if we want to continue doing this on a professional level, we're going to have to figure out how to move forward through them. So
Mm.
tell us, what is one key challenge, obstacle, or failure you've experienced in your career, and how did you come out the other side better because of it?
This was actually kind of a hard question to answer because the first thing that I was looking at, I was like, okay, well, let me think of a specific audition, and I came to I auditioned for Jersey Boys a number of times when I was in New York. I got to do Frankie Camp, which was wonderful. I had a really great experience with them, and I got down to the creative team like 3 times, I think, and never got cast. And each time I was like, "Come on, what am I doing wrong? How can I fix this?" Da, 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 da.
Yeah,
Right? Because that's what we wind up going over again and again and again in our brain. And I think at one point you say the subjectivity, right? They're like, "Well, the girls are just too tall in the show right now." Well, isn't the joke that Frankie's kind of short? Never mind. Anyway, moving on. So that for me for a while was kind of a weird challenge, obstacle, or perceived failure, right? But then I tried to dig a little bit deeper into what does this question mean in a bigger sense? And for me, I realized looking backwards that I was never actually that serious about um, doing musical theater.
right.
I kept telling myself that it was what I wanted to do, and people kept hiring me, which was wonderful. And I got great opportunities, but I didn't put myself into classes. Like, I wasn't taking dance class, I wasn't taking voice lessons. Rarely was I in an acting class. So I just kept doing the work and thinking, like, I'm going to do this and it's going to work. And my quote unquote hard work is going to pay off. But once I stepped away from that and I started drifting toward voiceover, I started seeing like, oh, let me follow my money. Did I buy a mic? Yeah. Did I buy a new computer to do this specifically? Yes. Am I taking workshops in voiceover? Am I reading books? Am I spending my time equity with podcasts and things like that? So, one of the biggest obstacles to my success as uh, an actor earlier was that I wasn't really being honest with myself about how badly I wanted it because I wasn't taking action to make it happen truly. I was being a bit more passive and sort of resting on my laurels. When I found the thing that I really wanted to be doing, I started being more active in what I could accomplish.
Yeah, and you've, in a sense, kind of gone all in on that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that, and it just took that one click of a moment, and let's move on to our next section now then. Perhaps we can answer the question that I have in my mind to a time that I like to call your spotlight moment. That one moment in time that you realized, yes, I am going to be an entertainer for a living. Or maybe it was, yes, this is what I need to be doing as an entertainer. Tell us about that.
In terms of the spotlight moment where I was like, I've got to do this. It's back when I was, I think, 12. I never did look back and do the proper study of like, when did we go see this concert? But when I was young, my dad and I went to a Bruce Springsteen concert in Orlando. We were living in Satellite Beach at the time. And my dad's from New Jersey, where if you don't like Springsteen, I don't think they let you stay. And so he grew up on that music, and I'm watching him, and his face has what I always called a certain item eating grin, fill in the blank as necessary. And I saw him have this grin on his face. I watched him for a song or two songs or however long it was. And literally that night, I said, I want to do that for people.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's what sort of put me on the path of like, okay, let's do theater, let's do drama, let's learn how to sing. Let's just try and bring that kind of smile to people's faces. And to this day, one of the best compliments my dad can still give me is, "Oh, I had the grin, son. I had the grin."
I love it. And would you mind talking about or just expanding on that transitional moment in your career when you really connected that dot with yourself when you went to voice and you're like, this is it. This is where I am finding all this passion and love, and this is what I want to do.
Yeah. So when I was in New York, I had a manager who was really great for me. He got me a lot of opportunities. And he set me up with a meeting with an on camera commercial agent over at Paradigm. And I went in and I chatted with Doug for like 40 minutes, and we were talking about theater, and I was telling him about how much I loved doing Avenue Q in the past down in Phoenix. And after our little chat, he was like, just come with me. And he sort of like grabbed me by the shoulders and walked me across the office and sat me down in front of a guy named Matt, who was an agent from the voiceover department. And he goes, you two, talk. And that was the first time that I sort of had an opportunity to read in a booth and do any kind of audition, even. And they sort of started freelancing with me. And I was like, oh, this is really neat. And so I wound up getting on one of those pay to play sites, right? Like they have voices.com or voice123,
Yep.
which now I'm kind of like, oh, you guys are predators and I hate you. Um, but at the time, I didn't know. I was looking to cut my teeth, whatever. And I wound up with an audition for an animated feature for a dubbing job. And it was called Richard the Stork at the time. I don't know if that wound up being the final title, but I got to audition for Richard. And he was a little sparrow who thought he was a stork because he was raised by storks. And that morning, I woke up and I was I was kind of grinning, and I rode the subway smiling. I did the audition and I was beaming, and I left this audition glowing like Eddie Murphy in The Golden Child, if you've seen that movie.
Yeah.
And I'm literally on like 22nd and 4th, and I'm walking down. I was gonna go meet Jackie, my wife, down at Union Square where she was working. And I got on the phone with my dad and I'm glowing, and I just say, Dad, I think I found the thing I'm supposed to be doing. And it was legitimately that clear. I knew that whatever I was going to do, I had to make this happen to the point where even when I was going through the Jersey Boys auditions, I was like, man, wouldn't that be a great survival job as I try to do voiceover?
Wow.
Which
Yeah.
sounds
What a
nuts,
switch
right?
in your head, hey? That's fantastic. I love that story. Well, let's piggyback on that real quick and let's talk about your number one booked it moment. I mean, walk us through that day, the auditions, the callbacks, if those happen to be part of it. I mean, what was going on in your life and what about that moment makes it your favorite booked it moment?
Uh, I would say that that story is probably the closest to being the most impactful, even though I didn't book that job. I didn't. It was enough information for me to take in that it caused a big left turn. That said, there is a show that I'm working on right now that is going to have a really, really special place in my heart, but I can't tell you about it yet.
That's fair enough. Fair enough.
That story, though, is actually a really fun story. Part of why I booked it is because I took a road trip with my dad. There's a weird through line with my dad here, I guess. Um, but I took a road trip with him, and part of how we were trying to entertain ourselves was just reading bad jokes, like or dad jokes or whatever. Whoever was in the passenger side would be reading jokes to the driver, and I wound up using a specific voice, and my dad started laughing so much that he almost had tears in his eyes, which that's ideal for the driver.
Yeah, right.
Um, and I just happened to come back, and the next week there was an audition opportunity that I was like, oh man, you know what would work? You know what would work really well? Bleh. And so I used it, wound up with a callback. We made some minor adjustments in the callback, and I wound up booking the job, which is really cool because then I could go back to my dad and be like, Dad, it worked.
I
And
love that.
I can't wait to share this project with everyone. It's going to be so much fun, and they just haven't announced it yet.
Fair enough. Well, you know what? When you're able to talk about it, let's have you back on and we can
All
talk
right,
about it.
happy to,
Deal?
happy to.
Great. Well, let's take a moment to talk about the present. What projects are you working on now that you can talk about?
Mhm.
What are you looking forward to? And of course, look, we're amidst this global pandemic. How do you see the entertainment industry moving forward in the next couple of years?
All right, so there's some really big questions there.
Yeah.
The projects that I'm working on right now, unfortunately, I can't talk about, but I can talk about what I'm looking forward to, which is the Phineas and Ferb Candace Against the Universe launch that's supposed to come out sometime this summer on Disney Plus, and it's been so cool taking over that role, being asked to do the voice match for the character and come in and be a new member of this family because almost everyone else returned to the show who was asked. Um, and I think everyone was asked. So I think I'm the only new person. But the fandom has been so cool and welcoming, um, to me just stepping in and playing a part in this beloved universe. So I can't wait to share more of that with them. That's just really exciting, and it was a that was a wonderful benchmark moment. So I guess you could look back and say the number one booked it moment. That was a really cool booked it moment to get that job in the first place. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to sharing that with the fans, with new fans, hopefully, and with all the audience on Disney Plus because these guys, Dan and Swampy, who created the show, are so stinking brilliant. And they surround themselves with some of the most wonderful talent, some of the best writers, some of the greatest musicians, just very, very, very good dudes who are able to put out a really, really groovy product. That's for you, Swampy. Keep it groovy all the time. So that I'm really excited for. Now, the changes in the entertainment industry, what is not going to change right now? We're seeing so many new regulations being rolled out just to create more content, right? We're going to see testing. We're going to see really frequent testing for actors. We're going to see streamlined crews. We're going to see a lot more home setups like what I have right now. I'm sitting in a vocal booth, running this session through a really great interface and an incredibly expensive microphone because when all of the stuff hit the fan back in March, I said, all right, this is going to last. This isn't going to be 2 weeks and it's done. I know that that's what we're hoping for
Yeah,
from
right.
the policy standards, right? They closed LA for 2 weeks. I was like, I don't think so. And Jackie was like, I don't think so. And I said, okay, so I should get a really good home setup. I should get a booth. She goes, yeah, I think so. And luckily that's paid off. But we're going to see a lot more people able to record from home, which is going to send some seismic shifts through the voiceover industry. There have already been a lot of people who could record from home at a broadcast level, especially in the promo side of things. So, the coming up this Sunday on Fox, or yeah, whatever, tonight on the Daily News, next on Cartoon Network. All those people, they're doing their stuff from home, and that's been a standard for that part of the industry for ages. I think we're going to see a lot more of that for animation now. We're going to see um, a broader net for casting, because a lot more people are going to have broadcast ready home setups. The people who, work in Michigan or North Dakota or wherever, they are going to have had to upgrade their setups now because they couldn't go in and do their remote records from a studio. And I was speaking to a casting director that I work with some regularity, and she was like, yeah, if you've got friends that are great that aren't here, we might be able to use them now, as opposed to before everybody had to go into the studio. I say everybody kind of loosely because there's always exceptions to every rule, but in the voiceover side of things, we're going to see some major shifts on client readiness to do that.
Yeah, I can imagine they've always known that this moment was kind of coming, regardless of a pandemic or not, but just
Mm.
technology simply allows it at a price point that people can legitimately get into. And I suppose it was kind of an inevitability, right? But it's really they're open to it now, especially in having to be open to it. More than it's more than necessity to be open to it because of this pandemic.
Well, yeah, I kind of look at it like the release of Trolls, right? That the Trolls World Tour was released during this pandemic, and it was released directly to home cinema, completely bypassing the theater pipeline.
Yeah,
Um, I'm of I've got some mixed feelings about it. Um, One, because I love going to a movie theater, and I think a lot of people do, and I think that obviously great product, great films are the lifeblood of that experience. Um, if if companies start just sending things home, I see that as a big boon to a lot of people. But the point of bringing it up right now is that I am confident that they had an inkling that that was possible well before this pandemic, and probably had some contingency plans of how you would do that, right?
right.
But during this pandemic, they got their dry run without having to navigate any of the messaging of looking like a bad guy, right? They were
Absolutely.
able to dry run this process and say, "Look at us, we're helping you. We're giving you new things to watch, and it's a great way for us to help you during this difficult time." That might be an overly simplistic way of stating it, and I don't mean to take away from that positive factor that it does bring. And honestly, I was talking to some voice actors. This is great for actors who are, below the line. They're not on the marquee, because you don't get paid on box office sales. So if these home releases wind up being a boost to home market sales, that's a lot more money in union actors' pockets, which, hey, I'm for it. But I
Right.
definitely feel for those theater owners, theater employees, things like that. But you're right. I think the parallel I was trying to draw is that technology was always able to make, not always able to make this happen, but for a while has been able to make this happen at a reasonable price point. I mean, one of the coolest things about animation is that it has such a long production pipeline. From recording to release, a lot of times you've got about 2 years. So right now, they don't even have to get broadcast ready dialogue recording for a lot of it. What they have to do is get a recording that is of a level to where people don't want to rip out their eardrums when they're working on it. And then you can go in and re-record whatever you need to in ADR once everything is reopened, and you're basically just listening to yourself and trying to match your performance or match the animation that they've got now, which
Right.
you do anyway if they're changing jokes or whatever in the production pipeline. But you can get away with an iPad and an Apogee mic, and that's a little less than $1,000, right? To actually make that happen for a decent product.
For sure.
And it's decent. It's not great.
But
Uh,
it does the trick for the need at the moment.
Absolutely. Personally, I hedged my bets. I got the booth. I sprung for the good interface and the microphones and blah blah blah, because there are elements of the voiceover industry, or different fields like the promo stuff, like dubbing. Dubbing has been continuing, so things like anime has been continuing from home, so that has to be broadcast ready. Commercial has to be broadcast ready. So I thought, you know what? I don't even want to have a doubt about the capabilities of my home studio. Here I go, and thank
Yeah.
goodness for residuals.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's move on to the next section now. One of my favorite sections, in fact, and I call it the Grease Lightning Round. I'm going to ask you a handful of questions, and I want you to answer them as quickly and concisely as possible, one after another. Are you ready?
Yes,
All right, first question. What was the one thing holding you back from committing to a career as an entertainer?
fear or finance.
Perfect. Second question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Don't worry about making the right choice. Worry about making your choice right.
Love it. Third question. What is something that is working for you right now? Or if you'd like to go pre COVID, what was working for you before our industry went on pause?
Do your work how you want to do it, not how you think they want you to do it.
Brilliant. And the fourth question. What is the best resource, whether that is a book, a movie, a YouTube video, a podcast, maybe a piece of technology that you found is helping your career right now?
All right, podcasts, Talking Tunes, VO Buzz Weekly, books, voiceover, voice actor by Yuri Lowenthal and Tara Platt, and website iwanttobeavoiceactor.com, which is written by D. Bradley Baker, and he's fond of saying, if you can't remember that, no, you don't.
Fifth question. If you had to start your career from scratch, but you still had all the knowledge and experience you've collected from your career in this industry, what would you do or not do? Would you do anything differently or would you keep it the same?
If I had all of the knowledge still, I'd move right to LA.
Straight away?
Yep, right out of college, right to LA.
Boom. And the last question. What is the golden nugget knowledge drop you've learned from your successful career in this industry that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Patience is not a four-letter word.
So true. So true.
And I struggled with that one, trust me.
Yeah. I mean, we're always just so keen and so full of energy to make things happen now. And
I had someone, really wonderful director that I did one play out here, and something that she said was, you got to change that. You got to change that relationship and go with trust instead. Instead of patience, if you're going to look at that as a bad thing, trust that you're going to succeed. And I was like, oh, interesting.
hmm,
And it took a few mental reps, but I just I trust that I'm going to do the work. I trust that I'm going to show up, and that things will fall into place because of that.
absolutely. And to wrap up this interview, it is time to give yourself a plug. Where can we
All right.
find you? Yeah. Where can we find you? How do our listeners connect with you? Is there anything you want to promote?
You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Errigo Voice, ERRIGO VOICE, the typical way. And That's where I do most of my social media. I keep my Facebook relatively tight knit. Um, the thing that I really want you to watch is please watch the Phineas and Ferb movie when it comes to Disney. And that's not what Ferb sounds like. That's just me going, oh please watch it. I want you to watch it because it's gonna be so good and fun and if everybody watches it, maybe we'll make more. That's a lot of wishful thinking.
I love it. I love it. David, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been a pleasure to have you today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's nice to catch up a little.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My one call to action for you is to go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join our free email community, where we dig deep into a continually growing resource of truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you advance your entertainment career. Don't miss an episode. We have a new guest 7 days a week. Search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app and subscribe today. All the best to you. We'll see you tomorrow.